The review of Carlton's loss to Sydney at the SCG to commence Sir Doug Nicholls' round. It was a very, very disappointing display by our boys. We went down 11-12-78 to 9-8-62. Welcome to the review on the Jumper Punch channel of our loss to the Swans. Like, subscribe, comment, let us know what your synopsis of this game was. I hate to tell you so, but I told you so. Defensive profile, defensive profile, defensive profile concedes 5 goals in the last quarter to a Sydney team that was on its knees and in desperate need of a victory. And they got the job done when they needed to. Game on the line in the final quarter. We led it for the majority. And as we've seen so often this season, we let it slip against a good opposition with a reputation with which they have built for over a decade. And it was the same two players that beat us again, Chad Warner and Isaac Heaney. And it is becoming a frustrating venture to follow the Carlton Football Club in 2025. And people are probably going to roll their eyes at this, but if you had to listen back to the Jumper Punch on Tuesday, if you had to listen to the analysis that Nick and I went through, Nick Negropontis, that is, on an Untitled Blues pod before this game was played out, and if you had have been listening to all of us and listening to the way we've analysed Carlton's defensive profile in 2025 and the way we have approached all of that has been that we just get way too many numbers behind the ball and we get way too many of our offensive weapons behind the ball. And that came to fruition after quarter time against Sydney. We had the game on our terms in the first quarter. Didn't really make the most of it. We had all these inside 50s, but again, those numbers are inflated as well. When you have repeat entry after repeat entry, you really don't want that for a goal. And it's just showing us how hard that we work for our goals. And that is a way to defend the opposition too, stopping them from getting up their end and scoring. But ultimately, you've got to score yourself. So that's not too much a concern. But the concern is the amount of numbers and bodies we got behind the ball against a Swans forward line that consisted of effectively Joel Amartey and Josh Hamling, who were their two key targets on the night and who I do not rate one bit. And I don't think the AFL competition really rates them that highly. Josh Hamling is a changed backman into a forward who had only kicked a goal in his career up until that night. And Joel Amartey was coming off a month hamstring injury, and I don't think he's one of the premier key forwards in the competition. He's okay to a point, but Will Hayward is a handy enough forward, but they had nothing up front that we should have been concerned about when it came to dropping that many players behind the ball. And I understand Sydney is a good team at the SCG in their own right, but I mean, again, our defensive numbers are always going to be inflated when you throw so many numbers behind the ball and you don't have the gall or wherewith to actually forego some numbers behind the ball and just entrust your back six and back seven to maybe deal with a little bit more pressure so that when they do win that ball back, we actually do have numbers going the other way. And I think that also adds into our forward 50 and efficiency, the way in which we defend and the way in which we get so many numbers behind the ball that when they have to go back the other way, you see Motlop, you see Will White, you see Francis Evans, playing across half back and almost popping up in the back pocket on the odd occasion as well. And you do see that from small forwards in AFL, but not as much as we see in our team. And I think we're just asking too much of these small forwards at the moment. Not goal wise, not offensive wise, but just the work rate they're having to undertake to win the ball and win the ball back is it's just ridiculous at the moment. And seeing Harry Mackay deep in defence with about 10 minutes to go when we're around 2 goals down, I mean, it's just that particular passage there. When I saw Harry Mackay deep in defence, this is one of two things. If that's directive, then the coaches need to have serious questions asked of them. If that is directive and shape and setup, there is no rational reason for that to be occurring. If Harry Mackay made the decision to go down back in that scenario, well, there's no rational reason for that occurring as well. We needed a goal, and for some reason or another, we just continued to flood numbers back. I know our midfield was dominated after quarter time, and Pitnet really didn't do us any favors in the ruck. I thought Brody Grundy really outdid him, but our midfield was just so disappointing again, and we get beaten the same way by Sydney time and time again. Chad Warner, he was brilliant on the night. Again, he just had such high impact. And Isaac Heaney probably could have had 5 goals to go with his 857 disposals. And this is the issue, and we mentioned this last week, that if George Hewitt is your main ball-winning midfielder, then you've probably got issues as a football club. And Sam Walsh didn't really rate his game. Unfortunately, he was just looked slow and cumbersome, and he got caught out a few times as well. And his I mean, the lack of detail around him defending D50 stoppage, it came to fruition again, where we are just so reactive in those defensive phases. He had his back to Mark Pitnet in that ruck contest deep inside D50, and Chad Warner just said, well, I'm here to attack the ball. I'm here to be proactive. And Sam Walsh is just not that player. He's being asked to partake in ridiculous roles at the moment. And to see him with his back to the play and his palms and hands to the chest of an opposition midfielder playing a defensive role at that stoppage. And I know we had to be defensive in that phase of play because you're deep inside forward 50, but you have to be proactive. Sam Walsh and players in those scenarios have to win the ball there, right? And look, maybe it was directive for him to be fronting up Chad Warner at that particular stoppage, but it just didn't work. We conceded another silly kick in goal again. And again, we suggested that the Sydney turnover game was going to be one to keep a clear eye on, and we needed to be so aware of it. And they outdo us on the turnover score source, 7-9-51 to 5-3-33. And again, our failure to convert first possession to clearance on show again. We are the worst in the competition when it comes to converting first possession into a clearance. We went at a rate of 69%. First possession stats were even, 43 apiece. Sydney went at 83%. We went at 69%. And that midfield at the moment, it's not the right mix. Chera, or rather, Cripps is a bigger body. Hewitt is a cumbersome and dour midfielder. Walsh, we know, has got back issues, and he looked good against St Kilda, but that was against St Kilda. And then Adam Chera, who had 35 disposals and was probably the pick of our midfielders, but did it really hurt the opposition? That's the question that needs to be asked here. And again, we just work so hard for our goals. We just work so hard to work the ball back the other way offensively, and nothing is efficient. The offense is not efficient. The defense is not efficient. We defend with too many numbers. We don't attack with enough numbers. We leave so many goals out on the park. We leave so many shots out on the park as well, where you think we're clean out and we're going to get a shot at goal, and then we don't. And again, the issue of the small forwards, people are going to raise the issue of Jesse Motlop, who was horrendous again, and Will White, who's only in the infancy of his career. And Corey Durden too, who was probably the pick of our small forwards, but wasn't really able to get involved. Those three players weren't able to get involved. And Frankie Evans, he and Motlop playing this hybrid small forward midfield role that just doesn't really seem to make a hell of a lot of sense. It looks as though it was going to be the Jagger Smith role coming into 2025, and they've decided to keep that and use different personnel to float through there. But I mean, this performance was like, it was similar to having your teeth plucked out, similar to getting a paper cut and the tip of your finger. It was a very hard watch. Very hard watch for a majority of the 120 minutes that we played on the SCG. And people are going to use the excuse that when Jack Silvani went down, it all went pear-shaped, but I'm not using that as an excuse. If we're worrying about Jack Silvani going down, then I mean, we've got bigger problems. And again, it's not just on the coaches, but the lack of midfield rotations, the lack of changing things up in that game as well in midfield when we were getting soundly beaten, um, suggests to me that we are we are on the nose a little bit when it comes to our form, and we are in a slump at the moment. I mean, you look back at our wins over the last 6 to 8 months of football, inclusive of the back end of last season, and again, we only have really one good win, and that's against Geelong. North Melbourne and West Coast and St Kilda. I mean, we're looking at bottom three, bottom four clubs here. Let's be frank. Standards are on the floor at the moment. There are no injury excuses. There may have been this week, but what about Sydney? I mean, they're missing Papley, Gordon, Mills, three of their highest output players, and they well handled us in that last quarter. A lot of issues going forward. Um, Something needs to change. I don't know. We've said that about a million times when it comes to this playing group, and it is still early in the season. But list management now will be looking towards trades. They will be looking towards getting in picks. They will be looking at this Tom De Koning move, whether he moves away from the club and we get a first round pick. We really need to start considering letting go of some of these players that we have loved for 6, 7, 8, 9 years. If we truly love the Carlton Football Club, we have to let go of this emotional attachment and this sentiment towards some of these players, and we need to put the Carlton Football Club first. And I know it's all very surface level analysis, this, but I feel, and I'll raise this on the jumper punch on Tuesday. I feel as though us as a fan base and a football club, a lot of us are scared to lose players in the fear that they will do well at other clubs, a la Matt Kennedy. And you can't have that mindset. You really can't have that mindset. Um, Sometimes it's the right decision. I think we did make the right call moving on a player like Matt Kennedy because we were too top heavy in that midfield, and he suits that Bulldogs midfield quite nicely. And we went with the defensive type in George Stewart, who's been good this season, but I didn't expect him to have so much ball in hand this season, and that's a concern for me. All due respect to George Stewart again, who's been really really good this season, but we've put him up in the top of coaches' votes, and is he really that good ball in hand? Uh, Probably not. But there's no knocking aesthetically. I mean, the way he kicks the ball is not conducive of what I think many like to see. But no one can really deny his output. But I think that is part of our struggle as well. Can we get someone more offensive on the ball? But that's list management. Is that, or was that going to be Jagger Smith? Probably. I mean, we'll be looking towards now list management making moves to bolster the midfield again and make our midfield a lot more offensive and a lot more assertive and a lot more direct when it comes to ball use and a lot more impactful when it comes to our ball use as well. So overall, a really, really, really disappointing display at the SCG on Friday night. And look, was it to be unexpected, a result like that? No, Sydney went in as favourite, uh, but it just goes to highlight that when we do have those travels and we have to travel away and we have to notch up a win with a few little injuries, with a few things not going our way, it just gets a little too hard for some of these players and some of the coaches too, and probably for some of us as well, because there is that sense of apathy which has continued to creep in over the last 12 to 18 months with this group, which is really really frustrating. Um, the Giants game is going to be a fascinating one. We'll go through that on the jumper punch on Tuesday. And who comes back in is also going to be one of great intrigue. The injury list will come out, of course, on Tuesday night. We'll get an update on Blake Acres. We'll get an update on Tom De Koning. We'll get an update on Jack Silvani, who I'm led to believe will miss at least a week or two with that groin. Blake Acres is likely to come back in. Lockie Fogarty and Zach Williams are potentially due back, so that's one to keep an eye on. I don't know where Orazio Fantasia's disappeared to. It's almost become a fantasy with this calf injury. It was supposed to be a week or two, and now it's turned into nearly 3 months. So not too sure where his form is at. Could Alex Chincotta come back into the team? He was pretty solid in the VFL. I like the form of Billy Wilson. Maybe he can come into the team as well. I thought he was really one of the better players in the VFL on the weekend. So we'll touch on all of that and more on Tuesday night on the Jumper Punch. again, let us know what you think of the performance. I mean, there's not really much to harp on about. The same issues that I've mentioned 150 times on these previews and reviews, and over the last 6 to 8 months have borne fruit at the SCG on that Friday night. And again, I'm not going to sound like a broken record and continue to harp on about it, but something needs to change with regard to the way we set up defensively, because it is far too inefficient, and it is causing us to leave a lot on the scoreboard, or leave a lot out on the park when it comes to the scoreboard as well. So like, subscribe, leave a comment. Looking forward to what's to come on Tuesday night. Lyndon from Top Dog Liquor is going to join us, so that's going to be a lot of fun. We'll see you on Tuesday. I do think we'll beat the Giants on Saturday, but we'll have a preview for that up a little bit later in the week. If you've got any questions as well, please feel free to leave them below, and I'll do my best to answer them come Tuesday night. Go Blues.